Okay.
Yeah, so PK. I might address a couple of the case arguments, just a couple specific ones, and I'll just kind of yell at you to do that. But
Okay.
to start with on my day.
I mean, okay. So they're really technical. Are you saying like you just gonna be on the page, you just gonna make a reference to some of the stuff? Or
Yeah, I'm just gonna reference some case arguments. I'm not really gonna be addressing the case on my line.
Okay, that makes sense. Is there a long one?
Yeah. There wasn't gonna be anything I gave in, and I was I'm trying so hard to put it. Is anyone not ready? The affirmative is unable to accomplish the production and the invention and the reinvention of a Frankenstein body-like body, of trans-like the body, of trans-woman false question, normative question of general and racial lines, and taking the supremacy notions of sex intersecting, when able manipulation is psychiatric, objection to competition, they call, seeing the monsters of the world, like unique sacrifices, these are ritual undoing of this reality. Their genealogy, national appropriation, but the district of the kind of society, but does not do so. Does not do very much. The question there, which this sex is reifies, it's on the cross history and indeed enacts white supremacy as a primary modality of his violence. That's what this still means, right? But how the middle class is characterized by the ungendering of the captive flesh, which included several transmen, for example, there were individuals who were captive from the Caribbean who identified as Mujerado, which is a category of individuals pre-colonial Latin America who existed as what the word means to become woman, which is a unique gender category that was undone during the experience of the middle class, but nonetheless was not done to black bodies. The reason why they're focused on anti-blackness as productive of this violence is a valid starting point for trans women of color specifically because it ignores the ways in which the history of slavery acted across the entire Atlantic region to produce a system. Additionally, Striker 6 has the following to write about my non-vaginal trans pussy. Striker 2006. Everything is fucked up beyond all recognition. This hurts too much to go on. I came today as supposed to ever coming giving birth literally. My body cannot do that. I can't even believe that yet. I claim to be a woman. How? Why have I always felt that way? I'm such a body. I can never be a woman like other women, but I can never be a man because there really is no place for me in all creation. I'm so tired of the ceaseless movement. I do war with nature. I am alienated from being. I am a self-mutilated deformity, a pervert, a mutant trapped in this monster. Flesh God, I never want to be trapped again. I have destroyed myself and I am falling in the darkness and I am falling apart. I am the realm of my dreams and here I am underwater. But swimming upwards, it's dark, but I see the shimmering light above me and I break through the plate of the water surface, my lungs bursting. I suck for air, but I find only more water. My lungs are full of water inside and out. I am surrounded by it. Why am I not dead? There is no difference between me and what I am. There's another surface above me and I swim frantically towards it. I see a shimmering light. I break the plate of the water surface over and over and over again. This water, however, annihilates me. I cannot be and yet an excruciating impossibility. I am. I will do anything to not be here. I will swim forever. I will die for eternity. I will learn to breathe water. No, I will become the water. If I cannot change my situation, then I will change myself in this act of magical transformation. I recognize myself again. I am groundless and boundless movement. I am a furious flow. I am one with the darkness and the wet, and I am enraged here at last. The chaos I held at bay. Here is my last strength. I am not the water. I am the wave and rage. It's the force that moves me. Rage gives me back my body as though fluid medium. Rage punches a hole in the water around which I coalesce while the flows come through me. Rage constitutes me in my primal form. It throws my head back and pulls my lips over my teeth. It opens my throat and rears my head. It rears me up to howl. And no sound dilutes the pure quality of my rage. No sound exists in this place without language. My rage is a silent raving. Rage throws me back at last into this mundane reality, into this transfigured flesh that aligns me with the power of my being. And in birthing my rage has rebirthed me. The one he spoke on vaginal appropriation is an account where gender is tethered to sex and which in captivity within gender norms reifies the actual modality of medical and genital erasure that is the epistemological bedrock of sex and students Striker horizon of six. Transsexual bodies and unnatural bodies in medicine science is technological construction is flesh torn apart from together again in the shape of matter which is born. I am too unperceived flexible human that means my body and mind is linked from humanity community fuels a deep and abiding rage and even I recognize conditions in which I must struggle to exist. Janice Raymond says the problem of transsexuality can be best served by morally mandating the out of existence be gone by our insect, or rather say that I may train you to dust your appropriate with your creation. Their focus on sexuality reproduces this motivation that continues to like black woman and black vagina and the one I see, and then you're going to take a descriptive account. They don't give you any way that they can explain the experience of a black trans woman or a trans woman of color who might not have a vagina, might not identify with a vagina, because the word vagina is itself triggering to many trans women, because we will only ever have a fake vagina made out of testicles. That's how sexually assigned surgery works, which is in turn what they being the medicine system tells us is the fate of our existence, right? Our emotional disorder confines us to this infinite longing for a vagina that is itself the way by which the sexism operates across history, which is the continued definition of vagina and woman. That I'm not saying that they themselves actively perform this, rather than which they describe self-society as not a description that is good for trans women, because it's a description that enacts the sexism, even if only unintentionally, as before in a church that one AC that will be best resolved by gender self-determination and prove that perm can't solve it, also will be more, but the perm can't solve if their description of civil society is one that is bad from the perspective of trans women. And this is why we are saying that you should orient your critique of civil society through the perspective of trans women of color, so that you can overcome this history of, quote, vaginal appropriation, which the way that they articulate it is also problematic. Additionally, their focus on sexuality and mystification of sex predicts and cis sex economy regulation, whereby the bodily difference between cis and trans people are rebounded to the psychology of trans women, suturing the contradiction of gender and embracing anti-trans violence, Sullivan 10. The trans women present them with adult and directing the focus not because of orientation, but because of her gender presentation. There was sexual activity, and that repression directed activity was the presentation of her gender. The confusion of sexual and gender identity is directly the same assumption of gender transgression, but conceals her listening about sexual congestion, something that is perceived to be bad in the transgression, and rather both sobering widespread though it doesn't cycling through representation of violence that is characters are trans, and the punishments and active repeated are visited characters who are transgressing gender norms rather than sexual ones, parsing gender from sexuality in this way is obviously a fraught enterprise, and I do not wish to exacerbate the goal. Gender and sexuality are inevitably bound, but this does not mean that they are the same thing, and the assertion of their fungibility has dire consequences for trans people. I don't think the affirmative intends to assert the fungibility of sex, sexuality, and gender. However, I believe they perform their answers to our arguments. For example, they say that the one AC is always gender self-determination, so they don't understand me. I think that argument ignores the ways in which their presentation is indeed violent towards trans women, or at least the one trans woman who's in this room at least saying they're out as a trans woman so far. So I think that's a pretty compelling link as to how their genealogy reproduces this set understanding. Additionally, onto the alternative, they gender determination is a radical method of opposing the nation's statement of democracy. They say that their act is already that, and Stanley, they don't understand because not a link to it, because it's only a Hegel, but that's not true. He's quoting Franz Fanon's critique of Hegel in order to make an argument of the nature of queer and existing society. There, a choice to not address this link is why the alternative that are also conceded that there is a foundational structure of modernity that is based on the eradication of queer and trans bodies, as well as bodies of color, and that those two violence work in tandem. It does not make sense to account for the passage without accounting for the cis-sexist nature of that ungendering that was imposed upon the black captive. So I don't think that their dismissal of Stanley is very clear, because it ignores the ways in which modernity is created through multiple co-constitutive antagonists. They say that blackness on case is the structural side of fungibility, but I think that argument ignores the unique violence that other trans women probably undercuts their arguments about how they are able to address that violence, because they talk about misgendering done to black women, about trans women. However, that ignores the ways in which those black trans women will still experience a sort of sexism that is intersected with, but different from, white supremacy that is faced by non-trans black people. So I don't think their argument is really able to cover these specificities in slight 8 in the 1 and C, as well as the 8 indicate this getting to be intersectional is a uniquely bad method, because it guarantees that trans women of color and black trans women will never aspire to positions of leadership or whatever movement they want to aspire. They're confirming the prostitute that doesn't do anything for the people who are, one, desexualizing the status quo, aka trans people, and who, two, are nonetheless still relegated to the side of the prostitute, e.g. all trans women are cross-dressing associated with sexuality, even though we are presenting gender, not presented sexually. So their description is not one that can solve for that sort of presentation. They say trans stuff is a contingent violence. I'm not impacting that with the alt. The assistant anti-trans violence and contingent violence is one that I would like to attempt to explain on top of your village rights down to because the possible rights and vision tests, but that vision is self-intended by history of medicine, science, religion, and systems of knowledge. They are unable to account for the really presenting you an account of prostitution coming out of the history of white supremacy and middle class that is unable to look to the ways in which they were nascent, middle class medical histories that already tended toward the destruction of trans people. Additionally, we are best able to resist violence and misogyny and the environment of trans people through our presentation of polyvocal history. The open history contestation therefore closes it because their history of vaginal appropriation ignores trans people. This is done before. So they're being inclined to diagnose the trans in general systems as assessing the response to that. They are simply conforming to their full of the precursor to the something often the active disability of vital health and help finding the body. Right, all the body are wrong. identity of different practices, development, physical, or the car that is what's called the final vertical concept, totally for city runs on civilization, market civilization.
Okay. Sex and gender are different.
Mm-hmm.
So the 2AC said that understanding how Black women understand their sexual performances and the way that their bodies are sexualized is important to understanding how they perform gender. I guess, why is this?
I guess I'm objecting to the account of performativity that you're offering here, because I think we might have different
So your
understandings
argument is
of
that
that
gender is
term.
not performative?
I don't think that gender is merely performative, or else
I
how
don't
do you
think it's merely
explain?
performative. Is your argument that
Okay.
gender is not at all performative?
No, I would say gender is in part performative, but that cannot access the incorrigibility felt by trans people when they are misgendered and know that that is wrong and feel that wrongness with their body.
So I guess how does the 1AC ignore or paper over or disavow or create no room to discuss the misgendering that happens in trans women's bodies?
I think that is the slippage between Black woman and Black vagina throughout the 1AC that I think we are objecting to, and I understand that you're trying to say that it's a descriptive account of civil
What does it
society.
mean to define gender or self-define gender?
It means that you assert your existence as somebody within a collective
If
community,
Black
and
women-
people also asserting
If
their.
some Black women exert their existence in means of having a vagina, what is the link to the app? You said that there are
The
other
link to
Black
the
women
app
who
is
do other
still your
shit. What is the
discourse.
link to why the
We are
app is
saying
that?
that gender self-determination is a good methodology, even if you win that you're affirmative and that's the type of gender self-determination. I think that you're winning offense to the kind of self-determination that you're proposing in your 1AC.
What's the office to the kind of self-determination? Because I think we certainly need that part of the word. What is the office to?
The offense is
app
the discourse that you construct, which we think your race is trans women. Even though you say it doesn't, we
What-
still believe that it does.
How? Explain. So James is talking specifically about the reproductive nature that happens post 1850s when slave trade is disallowed. It does not. I already made this decision. It does not apply to the way that trans women's bodies are positive. Are you saying that we should obfuscate that part of the conversation?
No, I think that we should look to the ways in which that
So
conversation
the alternative
itself.
includes the
Are you
discussion
going
of
to let me
reproductive
finish saying what I think?
No,
you
see,
should do?
I'm trying to make sure the same thing. Does the alternative include part of the discussion about reproductivity?
The alternative gender self-determination can include discussions of reproductivity.
Then what is your
That's not-
offense you just said to the James?
Our offense is that when the way that you write your history, it starts at a certain point, it does not look to the sexist tendencies that already made it such that the middle passage was guaranteed to ungender captives.
So we didn't assume gender in our analysis of the middle passage.
I mean, you assumed gender, we don't think that you assumed the gender of trans people. You talk about trans people, but you don't talk about the unique history of trans people.
Okay. Sorry, we have 10 seconds left.
Yeah.
What part of the 1AC was I supposed to take out to do that?
Well, it would require putting a whole lot of new things into the 1AC, but
So what
also
did we take out of the 1AC?
the slippage between Black women and Black vaginas, which occurs in multiple points throughout.
You ready, people? Yeah. You just gonna stay right down there?
Hmm?
You said you're gonna stay right there.
Oh, no, he's just gonna send it.
Oh, sorry. My bad. So, I don't know if this matters to everybody. I don't think we ever went to the page, so.
I didn't know that.
It was more of like a mess than I thought it was gonna be.
But I understand it was a mess. I was just saying I never got it on the original page.
I was like caught up in my own thing.
And you was doing your thing. Yeah, that's fine. I got it all. I got it all.
That's why you're writing stuff down. It's like it's got somewhere.
So I'm gonna say, yeah, unfortunately. Somebody's gonna be mad at me. So. I was starting time. Okay. Yeah.
permutation. We are problematizing the ontological process of the way your J's are permuted. It cannot be affirmed in a trans-inclusive policy. There are a couple ways we are creating the U clause code that we highlight the mechanism by which the ontological process is not necessarily ontologically bound to the process. Your J isolates virtually the black vagina is not is precisely the trans way by which trans women who are prostitutes of body experiences of being a prostitute are not bound to the ontology that you your ontology necessarily a reason why the affirmation your advocacy statement the affirmation of a prostitute as beholden to the ontology what it means to be a prostitute one that cannot cover the specificity of prostitutes of color, i.e. the only experiences of those people who do not have vaginas. That's second, way to hear consistency. You don't have defensibility. This one C has changed. This one C has changed since the swing away in a way to be responsive to our critique. Yes, you predict our argument. That is fine and well. But our problem is the way you critique is that you predict our argument by using the black vaginas is precisely the same sort of discursive shit that we are following. That's not the way we're critiquing. But I think that's the way we have almost discursive practice. Secondly, it is a problemization of the ontology, or i.e., your advocacy statement is that even if you're correct, you have some particular names, stories, the advocacy statement you have mutually exclusive. Well, you need to be able to understand. There's also you cannot access. That's what goal. I understand that is not your point. That's precisely the problem. Material forms of violence described on through transmutal color. That is precisely the way we grab materiality of a body that have on to do in a very physical way. The last one that we make the answer also is your James Martinez that literally says not read that he's talking about being lesbians and transvestites. That's the way by which the assumptive quality of your author, which is positing and ontology bound by quality, is one that is not necessarily trans. I don't understand what it is. I think that I've done enough to build on okay. Doing things with a little we are a public Canadian means also your method of working is not necessarily way that become the trans and multiple bodies who are in prison in the that non-goals precisely that's why it's not a good form of coordination. But also you do not need your own battle, also an offensive turn and finally the argument process of the QEC. There is an argument that the method is a method made for bodies who are positioned as deviant. We think that while this is true, and sometimes it's not true at all, it's only true for single kinds of bodies in the market. This is the precisely access to sort of deviancy to say market deviate by different structures than the ones that you articulate. The what you see is necessarily incompatible with the way that the body's are positioned. You can't kind of grapple with the methodological process you articulate. That's why the communication is also. Move up to quantity form with no more important elements. Not Stanley. What if it feels good to me? What if it feels good to mutilate a homo? Dirty factors gave the world but near that near my death and waiting. What is it possible? Non-friction. Queer people body, none of the psychology that important possibilities that all of the bodies here, poverty, some of the second reasons that there's also the middle there's a middle way that I articulated the same means that there are a little bit of something that all of this, and what I see is necessary the little honey that produce for queer trans people, is distancing our there is no such thing as a group, as a black queer work precisely the form of blackness and structures and heights and violence between 13 black by mainstream to bring this work like the men including consideration it's not black woman police officers in America can't commit strange criticism. One was not allowed to distract with someone who's entirely black. The black person watches the assault.
Assault.
Yeah, assault. Right.
We're only gonna take up 45 seconds or so.
We're just right.
Okay, it's here. 45 seconds. Connection between blackness and sexual identities is important for being able to be constitutional. Is that some other trends will be found by words, really fucking about. Yes, that. 5:33. Right. You just hold the shot down there.
Okay, that'll be the case when I go to sit down. Okay.
Yeah.
No.
You want me to sort?
No. Okay. Our role about is to take out services and prostitute. They're conflating prostitution with prostitute. We conceded. They conceded our roles on evidence indicates that the black woman has been marked out as a prostitute as a body, and other people are related and equated to that body as a source of deviance. When they say that other people are affected by prostitution in different ways, our argument is yes, prostitution as a form of sex work has relegated certain bodies to certain social positions, but our argument is that those positions are all marked across the deviance that is the black body in the structural position of the prostitute. AKA, we know that non-normative sexuality is not okay because we define what sexuality is, and blackness is a negative standard for that form of coherence. AKA, every time they say that another trans woman is affected by different forms of sexuality, yes, that's our fucking criticism. is a structural position in which certain bodies are relegated differently. Our argument is a structural cause for other arguments. They're also conceding free net benefits to the affirmative versus material personalities. Black women can use prostitution as a way to create material gains within a space where they've been relegated away from the formal market into the informal market. When AC says that the list of raw system allows for us to eschew politics or respectability to engage in new forms of material. Next is a pledge argument that we need to create new signs and symbols outside of the ones given to us by civil society to create forms of self-love and self-meaning in our lives, refusal to internalize the tropes that civil society has placed upon us. And also the third is the community portion of the 1AC where we indicate that young black women are told that they are not good enough and that they're never going to be good enough for civil society. And try to flush was an external link to this argument is that we need to create new forms of community building that allow us to refuse to internalize the tropes of civil society's placed upon bodies. They conceded that net benefit of embodiment being good, which is essentially so it's the top of 2AC entities that we cannot reduce body, we can reduce the embodied experience away from the lived experience, aka every time they say that every day go through forms of violence. Our argument is yes, that form of violence also is embodied for black women. We need to understand the way that racialized, sexualized bodies engage in forms of histography. They've also conceded that the black women are the hinge point of fungibility for civil society, which is the extension of the Beasley and Bocce evidence that I just explained to you, that blackness is a negative standard for coherence. That means that other bodies get relegated to certain forms of incoherence, placed off the paradigm of blackness as the prostitute, aka deviance. The aspects of question of sequencing, politics, respectability, foreclosed discussion, and sexuality and advancement in blackness, sexuality, excessive oppressive affirmation of the prostitute, as a prerequisite to inclusion of transform and relevance room at all 13. The framework of all several language, talking about pleasure, feeling, sex, sexuality, as a single historical, patriarchal lens. We are also looking at the necessary to a higher order of structures to shape our sexual selves, respectability, politics, concepts, respectability, strategies, feelings, control, progression directly towards black women. Its political themes are largely independent. Ultimately succeeds in redescribing how the systems of power black men whose bodies have always historically been excessive on our street desires and narrative success, but all you seriously and limited how black women's bodies are intelligible within popular cultural academic discourse, which represent women following that ladies and queens and pictures of horse accounting, present with politics, respectability's potential to redefine heteronormative institutions and it's clear that British bodies of color, once they can be modified for persistent investment politics, respectability first to mitigate the radical potential of these queer working instances. Argument is not that we do not conflate gender and sexuality. Rather, we need a descriptive claim of the way that history has marked black women since the transatlantic slave trade, because we think the transatlantic slave trade represents a moment of pure gratuitous violence from which black bodies were alienated, namely alienated or reduced to flesh, which allows for civil society to operate in the way that it does towards other bodies, aka other trans women that exist in the status quo. Root cause argument is not a fucking link argument. It never has been. The idea that there was differences in sexuality before the Middle Passage doesn't answer the approximate cause of the way that the politics of respectability operates to mitigate certain bodies. The link isn't a fucking link, it's a link to the status quo. Our argument is not that vagina means to be black women, but rather civil society places vagina to be black women ever since the Middle Passage, because we need black women to reproduce for civil society to maintain its coherence. Our argument is not that there was not sexual exploitation before the Middle Passage, rather that blackness became racialized sexuality, aka there was a difference in the ontological rip of the Middle Passage that translates into current modes of discussion, which is the reason why permutation solves, because their only answers to the permutation are that our extension of this gene is that I already answered the conflation between prostitute and sexuality, and also the material violence, the way that material violence is articulated. Our argument is that material violence ignores the ontological position. It's a way of making themselves coherent to get the ballot, aka we do something pragmatic. Well, you do nothing. Also, the Wilderson 3 prison abolition social law. How is the production and accumulation of junior partners social capital dependent on the anti-black structure keeping both the black body using on the antagonist formation, participate the press institutions, social law that under the U.S. influence of the contradiction between the political demands of social movements, prison abolition, and political structure contracts, and political desire for positionality, applies sensitivities that are those contradictions on spoken desire, family, political institutions, society, practice, society, the production and anti-black politics, and the last percent, the service of the emancipation of black prisons. They will answer this in a really quick way. Getting out of prison doesn't change the ontological position of slaves, aka you still have the same please understand when you get out of prison. All people do is ask how the fuck did all these black whores get out of prison, and my society is more and more fucked. Arguments that you have a structural position which makes those sexuality, it can get into prison. The reason why you're discriminated against is not because you're, fucking in prison, it's because you're free.
That's it. That's it, baby. You mind closing that door, Stephen?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna go case. I'm gonna go critique, and I just return to its own thing, so I'll just tell you when I'm presenter. Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be case and then the critique. There will be a small review on the critique, and then I'll announce that I'll go into the terms, and it'll be a bit on the critique.
Okay.
Anyone not ready? Okay. The vast majority of the case arguments and certainly all their offense assumes that they are winning. They're also consider anything that's very difficult with them in the 2 AC or in 1 AR. Either don't mention or don't mention or don't answer. Stanley 11 and P. The liberal democracies constitute their modern structure, anti-queers, anti-blackness, white supremacy, and cis supremacy. When they concede their hypocrisy, they cannot access their arguments of black body inside of primary dereliction because they concede to the society enslaved and anti-blacks relying upon anti-queers and trans and types of further regulation and creation. They have conceded, for example, the Spiller's argument about the middle passage being ungendering is because that middle passage also was relying on the captivity and the ungendering of those of the Caribbean prior to the introduction of Catholics into that area, which meant that those people who previously existed in defiance of white norms, gender, e.g. the Lucano, were eradicated because they pose a threat to those structures of white supremacy, and they were people who were self-determining their own gender identity hundreds of years ago. Our movement has wanted to be going on for a long time as a collective movement forged in opposition to the violence of society. I think that when they mischaracterize our argument and when they don't answer most of their cases going to become irrelevant because they are wrong about the nature of ontology, the nature of reality, the nature of violence, and they are also erased of trans people, which is what the structure is. The structure erases trans people. The structure does violence to trans people. If their app reproduces that, and we want that is what causes, for example, the relegation of black womanhood to a site of hypersexualization that is also internalized in a way that is not desirable by those people, then we are winning that is the root cause claim. This is why root cause will become a link in this debate despite 1AR's contention. They say the rule about us within the process we objectively our cultural system, which means that even if they win, then we should offer the prosecutor. I think that we are doing a better job of that because we have presented an account of their own historiography where theirs is flawed. Their association between black women and black vagina is one that occurs within a certain understanding of Western white supremacist notions of medicine and science. They are saying that they really distributed the status quo, and that is true. However, they have not made that clear. In their 1AC, they keep saying that they don't mean to do this. It's intention versus impact, right? What they actually said was a discursive slippage between black women and black vagina. I'm pretty sure that I even said black woman become a black vagina at one time in 1AC, which indicates the ways in which they're failing to foreground this descriptive claim where they're failing to foreground the experience of trans women of color, black trans women. perceive that they are never able to truly account for the unique side of dereliction experienced by those trans women of color and black trans women who are derelict, not because they are black, but rather because they are trans or because they are black and trans, right? It's not merely anti-black descending across society, but that rather occurs within the structure of what did I say? Blackness, anti-blackness defines itself against the black body, and that black body is the site of deviance, which is used then to measure other bodies. However, you can see this is simply not true. When you are reading Stanley, which indicates the ways in which queer and trans people face that violence, or I guess I'll contextualize like this, right? They say that there is a structure, and that certain bodies are positioned in that structure in a certain way. They're really describing that. They are saying that bodies are positioned in that structure in ways differently than what the affirmative thinks, and their understanding of the structure is they were able to affirm the prostitute, because if you're willing to prostitute has violence done to them because of this structure of anti-queerness and cis supremacy, then that means they're not going to be able to resolve it. Stanley is actually quite good on this. I also read the one, and on the Communication Club indicates that. You read Stanley Overkill, yeah? See? Yeah, the card that also read the one indicates a dirty faggot. That they use the line dirty faggot is an answer that because it indicates that the queer body's position as always vulnerable to violence. It is a site whereby not only sexuality but gender within the white supremacist mind frame are reified, and they don't discuss that at all in their argument. They really say the black queers don't exist, right? They conceded on the money Alice's answer indicated that is itself erasive. Stanley is saying that that characterization is one that is flawed because it ignores the ways in which the black queer body participates in the structure of the biblical comedy of heterosexist violence, and that is why they are positioned such as they are based onto the critique proper, I guess. They say that they read this mostly like saying that prison abolition will never solve. We're not really stopping at prison abolition, right? You're using gender discrimination as a means to abolish the prison industrial complex, as a means to challenge gender norms that are present in the YC, as a means to affirm the prostitute in a way that does not erase the possibility of a prostitute who is a woman who doesn't have a vagina. And I think they have conceded the YR. Additionally, the offense, I mean, the YR team, even if it's really a descriptive claim, when they don't flag that as merely a descriptive claim in their actual text, that discourse is triggering for trans women who has an important thing to indicates our both position as always desperately in need of a vagina, but also impossibly held away from a vagina, which puts us in a position of non-existence, asubjectivity, right? We don't have personhood. We are pulled in opposing and impossible direction to satisfy at all times. They have not answered these ontological things, which means that we are winning, that even if they win, that affirming the prostitute is good, their methodology is impossible to do that. They say that the slave trade led to natal alienation that was cause. However, they say that the union to resist a totalized understanding of womanhood and vagina, that they are reproducing unintentionally in their 1AC. I'm not convinced that they did a good enough job in that 1AC to make it clear that that was a descriptive claim. And I think that you should give us some leeway here, because the 1AC text is what we're objecting to. And I don't think cross-examination clarified this, because they are unclear what the nature of that relationship is. They just saying that there is a distinction that did not become clear until later. Additionally, since the root cause is not a link, however, additionally, when your 1AC presents a certain historiography of vaginal appropriation, that we are saying is a historiography that embraces the experiences of trans women who were alive during that entire period, right? For example, the Carlotta, who was surprisingly absent from the 1AR's responses, but I spent some time in the 2NC indicate that that is the manner by which the Middle Passage sutured itself and managed to accomplish the engendering of African captives that led to the slave trade. That is formation of the birth of civil society, because they cannot pretend like anti-blackness is the fulcrum here, because we have one that it is not the fulcrum here, because if it is also subtended by sex, then that means there are either multiple fulcrums or multiple antagonists, in which case you should reject their ontology, because it would reject the violence done to the trans body. And I think that we are able to account for that through gender self-determination. If we are winning that there is an unintentional discursive slippage in the 1AC, that is not gender self-determination, because they are determining the genders of other people when they present the historiography that's violent. I think that we have enough defense here to get out of the links, and I think that we determined the case at that time.
Yeah, that's you.
I think I'll go to the bathroom. I understand, okay.
Show me way. Show me way.
I don't think the Italian was gonna be anything that would be very long. I think maybe like 20 seconds or something like that.
Can I just pull up another computer? Somebody pull up this is. A chair. Case and tray. It'll be obvious where I searched it. The role of the balance whoever creates best methodology liberates process one. It's the alternative of the process of gender self-determination does not criminalize the what it is analysis of sexuality. There is no slippage between sexuality and gender, but rather that a focus on black sexuality is important. Sequencing arguments material betterment demanding focus on sexuality, sexual body, and sexual performance to understand how Black people can use the sexuality, the overcoming of their bodies, but also the performance of things like dance and actually sexual engagement to make material needs and they continue to unique surrounded by Black women are more marginalized and formally their economy, which means dysfunction, tribe, and dark to create some kind of material betterment which spills over to our families and they all, not also the piece of young evidence, the piece of young evidence is a question of pleasure, which is I think an internal impact of the process of self-definition of gender. It's a question of how we understand our bodies and repudiate the types of tropes that demonize us as dirty figures and deviant, which is what the Lausanne ethics is talking about, the monstrous body, which is the queer body. Now there is a question of the beauty and community strategy. The one you see, the performance of the negative direction cannot access strategies of building a community because they engage in the policies respectively in the cross-examination, where you tell them to simmer down the articulation of the body about how our affirmative shapes only try to strong in or assume their arguments. All of these things are in context of a form of policing the rhetoric of the one you see. Now all of their arguments about how we've done our structural analysis of all are also reasons why it's never good enough. We cannot complete such a gender or fragments why we have to focus on sexuality, sex question, and sexual performance of Black women. That's a stop. And Poppy, I mean, like obviously understand the different things of the offense he says that they're literally democracy is not primary about the dereliction of Blackness. This is not even a link argument about or who calls argument. It's not a link argument, but that's the reason why our nurture of the middle class is naked. Including the way see I place that there is knowledge loss, which is what the James evidence is talking about. There's liquidal linguistic and material economy of subjugation that even if our formula analysis of the middle process is incomplete, that does not mean it's not sufficient to solve the case impacts of the top of the two arguments. Expression has existed for a long time because it's not new argument. It's supposed to know process. There was a unique form of racialized sexualized violence that we're talking about. The sexualized performance is not gender. They fall into the very trap of completion of gender that we do not assume gender in the middle passions. So what he sees is engaging in the process of how understanding the bodies of sexualized, which is the same for her analysis. I love the argument about the gender. Let's about mediated issues, which is consistent. There are lots of people we do not mention in the ways here, do not describe in the cross-examination. I'm like, what do you take out? He said, we just add on shit we have not sorry. She. But she says that we should take out which there's not even the time that we have a limited time. Now look, yes, we think that there are different forms of oppression that exist before the middle class that the way anti-blackness is structured. There were different problems to create the current attack, but anti-blackness exists before anti-blackness. They're not reasons what the primitive is necessarily problematic. Doesn't mean the reverse cause. The anti-blackness
You want standing?
Can we have a one see that?
Okay, that's not the picture.
I think you just need to see that.
Okay, let's see if I think that's all.
Oh, really? Yeah, that's funny.
I was like, I think I'm in 7th grade again.
Yeah, no, I always wanted like confusion with Dylan as well.
Oh, yeah.
Too much. That's funny.
Yeah, my mom, she's a school teacher, just goes by, well, I used to be assistant, but then it became mom too.
Oh, that's cute. Yeah.
And now I can just call her mom too.
I like that. That's funny.
Nothing wrong with people. I can go get Austin.
She's getting him.
On simmer, as we put it, simmer down, so no one wants on. I do truly apologize for that.
I get it.
I just want to make sure I get the confirmation email or whatever from there. Make sure I'm not mailing out. That's what I'm going to do. These back. Oh, I know what I'm going to do. This is a good debate. This is a good debate. Interesting. So I was going to ask, big problem, permutation, I get into it in 2NR.
Yeah.
That's one of the largest things. Given that, I also think they asked in a permutation. I'll probably still vote ask in this debate. This is primarily because I think that all of y'all at various times in the debate are simply bypassing the other person's offense, right? For instance, the negative has this really like cool like narrative thing going on throughout the 2NC. It's like 3 minutes of the 2NC that gets like no action from the 1AR. But again, it's kind of like just footnoted in the 2NR, right? Same with the app, they have like these 3 net benefits to the affirmative that are never really responded to you by you all. But in the 2AR a little bit, instead of going back over the 1, 2, 3, you kind of like put it all in paragraph form. I understand it's kind of like the 2AR form or whatever, but it would have been kind of helpful if you would just isolated those out. But given that, I also think that my decision is primarily based off two things. One of which is kind of like the role of the ballot that's liberates the prosecutor. I'm just having a hard time figuring out there's this moment that happens. I don't know if it's the 2AC cross-sex or the 2NC cross-sex, which really sits with me. It's just like, okay, there's some women who do have vaginas. What do they do? Right. And I was waiting for you to explain when you were talking about the triggering argument about how, you know, the erasure of queers means, as your evidence describes in the Stanley evidence, a state of non-existence, right? And that person would then exist outside society, which seemed to put you on the same playing field as the affirmative. But in the 2NR, that explanation of we are then outside of society, which allows us to speak to your creation of symbols and things of that nature. I think that you missed that portion of the 2NR.
Yeah.
And so their arguments about liberation of prostitute forces me to call into question what is the alternative as it exists in the 2NR to liberate not just trans women who don't have vaginas or fake ones, but also those who have real life vaginas. And so I find myself, like, it's hard for me to look at the ass and be like, well, they're right about this thing. I do think you have all the pieces that you need to win this debate. They're right about this, but I can't really explain to you all what they do about you. You see what I'm saying? Okay. The second thing is kind of like, I don't know if it's a sequencing, uniqueness argument. It's really weird, but I think it's kind of clever. Their argument is that, especially for Black women, that it's important for them to understand how their sexual identity, or at least their sexual expressions, work to construct gender. And I thought that was a portion of the debate where you kind of allowed them to get a little bit ahead, because if that's the case, then your criticism seems to be misplaced in this debate, because especially if it's true that Black women have to focus on sex or sexuality first, then I'm not really sure what the link is to this particular argument, right? Not to say you don't have other pieces of offense like the triggering argument and stuff like that, but it just top level stuff, it seems to fall apart at the very framing of the debate. Does that make sense, right? And so, given that the short end of what I'm saying is, I thought that the block, especially the 2NC, was a lot better at being a lot more concise on what it is the link argument was to the affirmative, and not, you were unwavering in the 2NC, and I really appreciated that. But I felt like in the 2NR, maybe it was a time issue. You felt a little bit rushed, but you gave them too much back. I felt like. Yeah. Right.
I feel you.
Yeah. Okay, so let me go through a couple of your arguments. First is this triggering argument. There's this cool new 2AR response about, like, there's no trigger for Blackness. I really wish that was earlier on in the debate. I didn't really consider that, but I think it's a damning argument. I think it's a damning argument. But even outside of that, like, what's the impact? You say that it leaves people like, we know we can't ever get this vagina, but we always long for one. But what's the impact to that if you don't take me back to the Stanley evidence and talk about that state of non-existence and how that individual could exist on the outside of society, and then speak about that positionality in context of how it would deal with Black women who do have vaginas. Does that make sense? Right. So I like
you want more striker in the QAnon.
Yes. Right. I think the striker is your impact that allows you to do two things. One of which is learning the terms case argument, but it also helps you on the alternative level of the debate, the soft case argument.
Yeah.
And so I felt like both of those places where I thought that you were really, really, really strong in the 2NC on fell apart, right? Because you were just like, the narrative didn't really get much airtime from the 1AR. Well, given that, it didn't get much airtime from the 2NR either, because you didn't take me back to the particular lines where she's talking about, like, I literally can't be done with the water. You know what I'm saying? I am the water, and how that, what that kind of, like, that morale of that story means in context of all policy for this particular purpose. After that, I do think that you link to their arguments about the public-privatized dichotomy of that, because you don't understand what exists outside of the world. You only criticize what already exists within it. And given that, the root cause claim, I thought this was an interesting portion of the debate, and I do think that you went some risk to that. However, I'm not particularly persuaded after reading most pieces of this evidence that it's more of a root cause claim. I don't think that your evidence goes as far as to say that. I can kind of get why you was like, this should be an essential starting point for the conversation, but I'm not sure why that should be the starting point for women who don't have vaginas. For women who do have vaginas. Yeah. Right. And so I thought that you had to do a little bit more there to. Maybe you just need to be like, you know, having a real life vagina is a position of privilege. I know that's like a real tough road to drive down, but I mean, these debates are going to be tough, they're going to be messy, and so that's something that you're going to have to think about doing. But even if that's true and you win some of these kind of like root cause you should start your kind of arguments. I think that the net benefits that went into the F kind of outweigh that and solve it to some degree, because this argument about how Black women can use their sexual roles to gain material benefits,
Yeah.
it's really, really, you have to deal with that, right? Because, I mean, that's the F. That's the F, is that they can sell themselves in figurative, ontological, physical sense, no matter. That's kind of how I decided to debate. I thought it was going to take me a lot longer to decide this debate, especially after the block. I thought you were really fucking good in the 2 and C, but getting into 1 hour, I didn't think it would work out for you. But some suggestions for you all. I thought that you need to deal with, I thought that the place where you missed the opportunity is when she's talking in the cross-section and she's like, yeah, you're right that our analysis, that the analysis of reproduction is not afforded to trans women, but still, right, you shouldn't have let the but still happen.
For sure, I should, okay.
Right, that's your link argument. It is not afforded to those individuals, which can mean that your app is like a self-informed politics that only seeks to research and stuff. Like you could have just stuck there. Right, and that's kind of the language of your striker evidence is like it's always that question of it's always not afforded to the trans body. So why should that be the type of policies that you promote or advance in this particular debate? And I thought that you should have made those kind of like role of the judge arguments a little bit more explicit. They were kind of implicit in the debate, but a little bit more explicit about what you thought I should prioritize and what you thought my role was. Because I'm making these arguments, it's just like, well, shit, the app might be good for us, even if it's not good for everybody. Right, and I think you have to circumvent that a little bit. Perm being in the 2 and R, I thought that the perm answer was also a little bit light. I thought that the permutation was going to be the new link, right? To kind of like slide in and out of trans identities, speak on behalf of them, but then really like we are them now, and then nobody knows. But also like the consumption of those narratives and of those stories that are presented in the 2 and C, and even kind of sub-mentioned in the 1 and C, you know what I'm saying?
I didn't want to assume that they weren't trans, if you get what I mean. And so I didn't know how to make that argument in a way that would still be offensive, that wouldn't have either position them as cis or trans.
I think that they have not said that we are not trans, but I do think that they have made some arguments about why we do have real vaginas.
Yeah, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right, and I think that I can understand why you're hesitant to make that argument, but I think that you could pick up on other portions of the debate to protect yourself from seeming offensive in that particular movement, right? They're going to make their impact turn arguments regardless. They're going to say everything that you said was fucked up and you should never tell Black women to do anything.
Yeah.
Anything. Simmer down, calm down. They're going to make those arguments. So you kind of got to know that going into the debate, and it's hard to be negative, but you have to be willing to, the strength of being negative is drawing those lines in the sand and being willing to take them up on those portions of the debate, especially when I think that they've given you access to some of those arguments. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. For you all, I thought that the 2AC pussy argument should have been in the 1AR. I thought that should have been the start of the 1AR because that totally rearranged that portion of the debate. As a matter of fact, it didn't get into 1AR or the 2AR, which was what I thought that was really interesting because I thought that was the best answer you had in the 2AC, which seeks to prioritize your role. Not that you all are always going to claim that you're like having real vaginas, whatever the fuck that means. But like you get what I'm saying, right? I thought that would help to bolster that. I also thought that y'all could have did a little bit better of like using your kind of anti-Blackness kind of frame of the affirmative to indict the literature base in which they're reading from, which seeks to kind of mention people of color, but never really talk about Black people. Does that make sense? Right? And I'm a little light on that.
Yeah, and then 1 hour, I was going through a mixture of trying to do, I guess, but which I totally see it didn't really end up working out. But how could I have better been like, our argument is like, yes, there is a root cause, capitalism, and different forms of sexuality existed prior to the Middle Passage. Natal alienation created a new form of ontology. Your piece of Stanley Evans is talking about like fucking Fanon and his colonial subject. That's not discussing what we're saying at all.
Right.
And how could I better articulate that?
Maybe what I was envisioning was the start of the 1AR being like, sure, they might be right a little bit about some of these root cause claims, but we've made an argument about why the focus on the literal pussy is something that is extremely important and necessary in order for you to understand how the Black matrix happens and therefore how we can produce our own symbols and stuff like that. I thought you should have just added it to like the case overview as opposed to treating it like a 2AC number 7. right? Because that's, at least for me, that's how important I thought that argument was for you all in this debate, because I don't think that you all necessarily have the evidence to deal with some of the link claims that they're asserting. I think that you kind of have the spin to deal with it, but that argument seems to be spot on in regard to making sure that you forward your AF in this particular discussion, because, and this is another thing I was going to say, I think that y'all let them kind of upplay this queer argument in the face of a woman argument, right? And I understand why you was like, well, duh, that makes sense. But no, it doesn't make sense, because you all are talking about Black women and they're talking about trans identity kind of in the abstract. There's Stanley evidence, and a little bitty portion of it kind of talks about trans women of color and how they die at a disproportionate rate. But that does not assume women. It's just trans bodies. Because you can be MTF or FTM or somewhere comfortable between none of, but the positionality of the Black woman, which is what your James evidence is talking about, on point, right? And so similarly, I think that y'all shouldn't be hesitant to draw those lines in the sand. I thought that you all should needed like slightly less no-link argument, slightly more impact term stuff, right? I thought the pussy argument would got you there. I also think you, for other judges, I think you need a better explanation of the functionality of the permutation, right? I think that what happens in the 1AR in this debate is you extended the permutation and you explained that there was no benefits to it, but you didn't explain to me, at least how the 2AR explained to me what the permutation functions as, right? It was just kind of like present still do both. Last thing I guess I'll kind of say is the whole like tell me to simmer down, mispronounce stuff. I kind of view that as wash. I don't even know if that's fair to do that, but I didn't know how to navigate that since I felt like it was violations immediately on both sides. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so if y'all want to deal with that on a in a personal level, y'all can deal with that. No. But as far as me dealing with that, I choose not to. How about that? Yeah, but I mean, I just didn't know how that worked. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's messy.
Makes sense.
Is there any other questions for me? I hope that was clear enough.
I might actually, I need to kind of process the Stanley thing, but after I think about it for a minute, I might.
Mm-hmm. Like I said again, I thought the substance of the debate was phenomenal.
Right.
I just think that you all let some executional stuff get away from you and didn't make the substance, the justice setting.
I would not explain into your business. It sounds like you were able to resolve it at a very top level. This Wilderson sequencing argument is an abolition bad starting point. How should we be addressing the argument?
I thought you were right.
Okay.
I thought you were right in terms of, I think that what was happening is that, okay, here's where the confusion happens, because I do think that you all were misleading in the cross-examination, because she asked you, it was just like, are you talking about prisons, like, literally niggas stuck behind behind bars or whatever, and you like, yeah, but you kind of back it up by, but we're doing it as a way of self-determination, which what you were saying was you think the world is a prison, right, for trans bodies, and that we need to dissect that. So they read an argument that was just like, just in case you were really about this like prison abolition shit, like for real,
yeah.
We're gonna read some arguments in regards to that. However, yeah, like you said, that debate was able to be resolved at the top level argument. So I think that in terms of that little portion of the debate, the Wilson portion, I side with you all on that question.
For sure. It was just phrased as sequencing, so I just wasn't sure how it was going to line up with things. I think other than that, it makes pretty clear.
I know you're sick and stuff, but you don't sound good. You just don't sound good. There's a lot of, you have this thing that when you don't know what to say, you like scream, you're like, and it's like, it's really distracting. And so, that was the thing I thought that could have been better. Also, the permutation answers I felt like could have been a lot more offensive. You were just more so like, are they still apply? Maybe, kind of. And I would have been like, I'm so glad you heard us in this debate, because that's the news now. And I thought that you could have started with that particular permutation and just worked your way through all of that and created a lot more new offense and things of that nature.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Good luck, everybody.
Thank you.